Good afternoon to you. Mark out of HurricaneTrack here. Tuesday now, the first day of July 2025. Thank you, as always, for tuning into my video. By the way, if you're watching, congratulations, you have made it through the first 6 months of this crazy year. And we got a lot to talk about. We have the possibility of development off the southeast coast, maybe in the vicinity of Florida, the eastern Gulf. Nobody really knows, so we'll take a look at that. We'll look at some historical stuff, where we usually see things develop in July. We'll start with that, actually. And then some climate data, some new information that comes out around the first of each month that allows us to look ahead for the next several weeks, and in this case, even into early August. So we'll look at all of that and a few odds and ends of other things, and we will see what we got. All right, again, thanks for tuning in. Let's get started, shall we? First of all, off the HurricaneTrack Insider site, our good friend Howard, way over in Bermuda, firing up our tropical cyclone points of origin and keeping it up to date for us, going all the way back to 1851. So let's click on July 1st through the 10th, the first third of the month. This is where we have seen activity going through 2023, and you can tell where the hot spots are, right? Eastern Pacific, which is busy now with Flossy and another area, we'll get to that. Gulf and Caribbean, somewhat busy. A few random areas here off the southeast coast, subtropical development. And then a smattering of main development region areas. Remember, we had Beryl last year that started at the end of June and through July as well, the first 8 days or so of July. So really not too busy when you consider the time frame involved, going all the way back to 1851. Now when you add the middle third of the month to the mix, and finally the third to make it a whole, basic math, right? Yeah, things start to look pretty busy. And let's just erode this away 1/3 at a time and look at the last part of July. This is when things do start to ramp up. We're getting closer and closer at this point to the so-called Cape Verde season, and you can clearly see over the course of a long time here, just in this time frame, the outline of the subtropical ridge sitting out here, because a lot of these storms go around it. That's pretty cool. And you can tell there's usually a pretty fat ridge sitting over the southwestern parts of North America, steering most of this activity that way. And in between, yes, you do have usually a mean trough position or average trough position in the middle, and you get a lot of activity over time, again, over almost a couple of centuries here. Not quite, but almost. Stuff coming into the Gulf and vicinity. So just an interesting way to look through the time frame. We call this climatology. Each third of the month, that's what things look like. And by the way, just to jump ahead, the peak time of September, that's how busy things get, climatologically speaking. All right? Another map. This was coded up by our good friend Will Woodgate over in the UK. And all this international help, we really appreciate it. This shows our areas of potential development. We have this system. Not yet an invest area, but the chances are up to 30%. We'll look at this in more detail in just a moment. Yet another area in the Eastern Pacific. We have Flossy over here, Category 2. And boy, I tell you what, the East Pacific is on a tear. I don't know how much more this part of the East Pac can just keep cranking out storms and hurricanes based on upper ocean heat content values. Eventually, it's going to all be tapped into, you would think. But we do have Flossy out here. The great news, obviously, let's zoom in on this. Love the interactivity of this map. And let's use this black color here to make things pop better. Luckily, Flossy is expected to stay away from the Mexican coastline. That includes the Baja. And I'm going to tell you what, once you get out here, clearly things are going to drop off from a thermodynamic perspective, because you see we go from major hurricane, that's the forecast, down to tropical storm, and then it's probably going to be dissipated well off the Baja Peninsula. But then, like I mentioned, we got to watch this next area for potential development sooner rather than later. It's just a very favorable pattern sitting right over here for whatever reason, cranking them out one by one. But eventually that's going to shut down, and I think that will allow the Atlantic basin to start producing. But remember, bring me back home for a second. What did I show you the first 10 days of July? We usually don't have that much anyway. July is typically a pretty dead month. So even though it might be somewhat quiet now, honestly, it's really quiet. And that little yellow area notwithstanding, don't expect much during the month of July. All right, that's just typically the way it is. And once we get into August, things naturally do change. And we see some signs of that change, which we will get to when I show you some of this climatological data that has recently come out. So here's the still image. Let's put this sucker into motion. I always appreciate Levi Cowan's website with these beautiful animations. There's Flossy with that gorgeous pinhole eye right in there. Maybe not quite a pinhole, but it certainly is a small eye. Central dense overcast around it. We're going to look at it closer in just a moment. A nice close-up of it. Then we've got a cluster of storms in the eastern Gulf, another cluster randomly scattered about in the southwest Atlantic, and then the Florida Peninsula, remarkably nice and clear for the most part. And yes, we will be watching this general area over the coming days for possible development. We'll just have to wait and see. The models are waffling depending on which run and which piece of vorticity or energy they pick up on. Nothing is really clear right now. I'll just say that before we even go much further. All right, so vorticity signature. I wanted to show you this. This is always one of my favorite tools. There's Flossy. That's about, I mean, look, it looks like a diamond in there or whatever. It's almost off the scale. It's just the resolution of the imagery. But that is some seriously bundled vorticity. The more round and focused it is on this planet, probably any planet for that matter, the more energy is getting spun around, and you get a tight little low pressure area. And we get cyclones. That's what we have here. This is vorticity spread out over a large distance, right? This is focused and bundled. Your heat engine in action. Now, interestingly enough, in the Northeast Gulf, we do have somewhat of a concentrated area of vorticity. So we're going to have to see, does this come across the peninsula and get out over the Atlantic? We'll put a big question mark there. Does it continue to fester here and work its way back more towards the west eventually? I don't know. The models are having a hard time with it as well. We're going to have to just wait and see about this. But sea surface temperatures, very warm, plenty of upper ocean heat content, latent heat in the lower part of the atmosphere. So we're going to have to monitor. All right, so here is Flossy. Check this out. This is the colorized infrared, and you can see that eye developing. But let's jump over because this is really cool to see, especially since it won't be directly impacting land. Boop, there's the eye that pops out. Central dense overcast, that's this area right in here, the CDO. Thunderstorms, convection pressing up against the stratosphere there. Very cold cloud tops. The upper air pattern, very favorable, being flung out in all directions. It's perfect. At least as close to perfect as you can ask for, I guess, in the East Pac. And I expect Flossy to go on to become quite a strong hurricane. And I don't know how many people, if any, live over here, but they might want to watch out. I'll just put that out there, all right? GFS, let's take a look at the Atlantic real quick. Not much going on here overall. We'll use this little purple color. That'll pop pretty good. Notice the outline of our big Bermuda high. There's Bermuda right there. Definitely, hey, the cat's trying to get in. You're going to have to wait until I'm done, Willow. I don't know if you can hear the cat scratching at the office door, but we have a cat one warning, all right? So there's your big fat Bermuda high sitting over there, and there's some of that vorticity and the energy associated with that stalled front stretched off the southeast down into the northeast Gulf. The question is, does that amount to anything going forward? Well, let's put this into motion. No, not really. The GFS, not too enthused about it. This is 3 days out. Now, look, let me point one thing out that's very obvious on this. All of that yellow and red and orange in there, that definitely is weather, sensible weather. This tells me all that vorticity down there, and even a little bit of a cyclonic look to it. This is going to be stormy and rainy and just generally nasty. I-75, I-95, I-4 that goes this way. The resort areas, yep, Friday morning through Friday. I'm sorry, I don't have good news for you. All of that orange and yellow in there indicates unsettled weather. All right, even through the weekend, it just does not look very good at all. Just being realistic about it. And again, it brings to mind, come back on again real quick, my expression, I like to talk to you, not just at you. Remember, it is about impacts. A lot of people are going to be going down to this area for the 4th of July. You probably have Universal or Disney plans or whatever the case may be. Maybe you're vacationing in the Tampa area or the Nature Coast, whatever. This will bring impact, showers, thunderstorms, gusty winds, but, just because it won't be a depression probably or any kind of a name, Chantel's the next name, don't worry about any of that. That's not what you need to be focusing on. Focus on that yellow and red and oranges that I was showing you right there. That, my friends, is what you need to be looking at. That is the weather. Underneath that's going to be rain and squalls and just blah. All right? So, wish I had better news, but I guess the better news is no, it's not going to be a tropical storm or a hurricane, but it could rain out your plans. I mean, look, there's Tampa Bay right there. Not looking real good as we go through the next few days. Meanwhile, there's another system. Let's just switch this over to the East Pack real quick, back it up so we can see Flossy. Flossy goes on and dies away. There's that thermodynamic process taking its toll, the lack of thermodynamics anyway. And then another one coming up there, the G storm. That looks pretty formidable too. Look at that. Wow. This is a week out, and it too starts to get on out there. And then another one after that. I mean, dude, we're going to run out of names out here. But I'm telling you, you would think that some time in the future, like near future, we're going to erode away all this upper ocean heat content, and these are not going to be able to form anymore. That's really, really going to be interesting to see. And a case study, let's look at the upper air pattern just real quick. I'm fascinated with this. Why is it so favorable? Well, right now with Flossy sitting right underneath a very favorable upper pattern, the outflow very well established, a little bit of a jet here on the southwest side. It's just perfect. And then more diffluence aloft with this next feature coming out. I mean, you just can't ask for a better overall pattern. And it's not even that far removed from the Atlantic basin, but enough so that things are pretty dead in the Atlantic while pretty darn active here in the Pacific. You can see just at 5 days out, look, absolutely perfect outflow pattern with this next system. Are you kidding me? One after the other, and it's just in this one little area of the world. One storm after the next. That's pretty amazing, you gotta admit. All right, so now that we are into July, the first day of July, let's take a look at some things related to climatology. Where might we be going from here? Well, this map updates always a day behind, so this is the June 30th anomalies map. And let's point out a few things. Eastern Pacific, no El Nino. That's very clear. Kind of a warm, neutral look, cooling off, whatever. I'm going to show you something actually pretty interesting. I think we might be headed back towards a cooler pattern here as the months go on towards the peak of hurricane season. But, the rest of the Pacific up here off the coast of California certainly is cold relative to average. And then here's this one little area of real estate down here that all these storms and hurricanes keep forming in. And eventually you would think they're going to exhaust all of that. Now this is an anomalies map. It's not showing us the true surface temperatures or upper ocean heat content or anything like that. But man, you'd expect eventually we're going to start carving some of these blue colors in here that I'm putting purple on. We'll see. Elsewhere though, let's keep moving. Pretty darn warm up here in the subtropical Atlantic. And down in the deep tropics, not quite as warm. Now that could be interesting as the season goes on, because if the whole Atlantic is warm or the northern latitudes are warmer, we might get more high latitude developments and shorter systems maybe, or systems that are stronger longer in those high latitudes, especially as we get towards August and September. And what I mean by that is we could conceivably get something coming off Africa, developing and heading out into this direction and staying nice and strong for quite a long time, because the water temperatures are so much warmer over such a much larger area. That could lead to higher ACE score later on, that accumulated cyclone energy. That's just a little theory I'm tossing out there. This could change too. It's only, June 30th? Let's see what this looks like in a month or so. All right? So speaking of down the road a piece, let's look at a few. Oh, I forgot. I got a couple of actual. It's hiding behind my webcam there. Actual sea surface temperatures. Speaking of the Gulf, if you're heading down, that's where all that rain and squalliness is going to be. This should start to knock down these water temperatures too, by the way, just a little bit, at least the surface, what we call the skin temperature. Right now sitting at 30 Celsius, or basically your upper 80s. So very warm, very muggy down there. If you're going to the Gulf Coast, whew, water temperatures are certainly warm for you. Off the southeast coast and even the mid-Atlantic, up in New England, too cold for me, forget it. Love the area during the winter for winter storms, but, and also the great white sharks like that cold water, right? Do they like the really warm water? I don't know. I'm not a shark expert. I just like this warm water down here. This is where I live. And water temperatures along the Carolinas and even parts of the mid-Atlantic region, upper 70s to low 80s, so not bad overall. Just if you're going to the beach, thought I would show that to you. Now, let's look ahead. All right, we got some smart people that I like to pay attention to up on the Twitter here. One of them, Eric Webb, and he was noticing some of this new climate data, the latest CANSIPs, and this is from the Canadian. This is part of their ensemble forecasting stuff. Just look at it that way. It's a good snapshot of the future. In the 500 millibar pattern, that's your steering layer, basically, for the peak of this year's Atlantic hurricane season is one that usually favors hurricane threats near the U.S. East Coast. This is what the CANSIPS is putting out. This is the 500 millibar geopotential height anomaly. So this is the anomaly, and this again is like an ensemble look. And that's pretty strong. That's your very classic look ridging across the Atlantic. That gets your tropical waves all the way over. Is this a guarantee that the East Coast will be hit? Of course not. But if you're looking, just like trying to solve a crime, you're looking at the evidence. This is a fingerprint. This is what you would look for. Oh, how could the U.S. get hit? This is one way to do it. But the big caveat is you got to have a hurricane sitting out here. I'll try to draw one in for you for it to hit somebody. If there's none of these, this doesn't matter. So we'll wait and see. The steering pattern could be favorable. Now we just have to see if the Atlantic is going to produce, and if so, how prolific. And then he's made up this nice little box that shows us how the density works from the 1940s to present, and it all matches up. Good research, good work by Mr. Webb there. We appreciate it. Moving on along, one of our friends, again, never met this gentleman, came close because I was in Oklahoma this year. I think he lives in Tulsa. Neither here nor there, but I like the graphics. I like his engagement and just the stuff, the content that he puts out. And again, he's looking at the same stuff that I like to look at, but he's done my work for me and marked it up, so it makes it easy for me. Today's July 1st marks the new release of the CANSIPS monthly data. That's what Eric was looking at. Some notable changes here include a slightly more favorable sea surface temperature anomaly configuration with warmer anomalies bleeding south. So the CANSIPS is thinking that more of this warmer water profile will get more towards the south here. But it's still warmer in the northern latitudes, as you can clearly see, than in the deep tropics. You think of a year like 2020, you had a lot more colder water up here relative to average, and the warmth was really focused down here. And we had 30 named storms that year. That's kind of how you do that. Additionally, precipitation anomalies are fairly robust, which indicates a rather active West African monsoon getting established when late July, early August. Given these factors, it appears we are on track for above average activity this season. So nothing really argues too much against it. And just looking at this, the reduced trades in the tropical Atlantic with strengthened trades in the Caribbean, and the ambient vorticity along the intertropical convergent zone, all this just tells us that know what we're looking at. Hey, once we get towards the end of the month, we should start seeing an uptick in activity, and the precipitation anomaly is starting to detect that as well. This West African monsoon helps to crank out those tropical waves, and the modeling is seeing some of these curves maybe some homegrown stuff, this is not gospel. This is a guidance tool. If this was all yellow and kind of dry, I'd say, we probably don't have much to worry about this season. Maybe a random storm here or there, but this is a pretty active look from the guidance. All right, this does not mean that it's going to happen. You understand? This is the exact equivalent in sports to showing the stats from a player and saying they should do really well in this game. Well, should is not the same as will. You understand? It's not 100% until it's actually happening. Finally, well, at least for this part of the update, Our good friend Danny Morris, the Florida CPA, as a lot of us know him by that moniker, and he is, I'll just mouse over his name there, CPA with an interest in tropical meteorology, and I believe he is in Florida. Anyway, the July 2025 CANSIPS run trended toward, and this is important, lower mean sea level pressure in the MDR as we near the climatological busy months of August and September, suggesting a less hostile background state than previously modeled. This is important because you lower the pressures down there, you ease off the gas a little bit of that strong trade flow, you promote convergence, you maybe warm up the sea surface temperatures because you're not blown across it with strong trades like, trying to cool off the top of the layer of a cup of coffee, for example. All of these signals are telling us we should see a ramp up in activity as we get towards the end of the month. It's all leaning in that direction. But again, we have to wait until we actually get something. And that's obvious. You're smart people. You probably know what all this stuff means. I just like that we can show it to you in some pretty cool graphics. Finally, one thing I want to show you related way back over to this. Let's slide this tab over so it can be next door neighbors with this tab. Focusing on this part of the Atlantic real quick. These Hofmüller diagrams here, or this set of it right here from Dr. Michael Ventris, this is really interesting. This is where we are right here. Let's use what we purple, I guess. This is where we are now, the 1st of July. This is the Eastern and Central Pacific. Very strong trades through here. All of these blues, this is that zonal flow, the wind anomalies, and all of those deep blues and even some purples, those are some pretty strong trade winds. On the other side, in the Atlantic, these are light trade winds. So already, what we're seeing from Eric and Andrew and Danny, this right here, we can see it being modeled in some of the guidance coming out from, in this case, I think this is the GFS, or maybe the Ensemble Forecast System. Bottom line, we're seeing it somewhat in reality. Now, yes, the GFS operational, there it is right there. This is only 2 weeks out, and that's a pretty light trade wind regime across the Atlantic, the deep tropics. See, that's 60 west, there's 120. You just got to know how to look at this, like looking at a skew-T diagram. Some people can look at those like a sounding, and you know exactly what you're looking at. And when I look at this, I go, man, some serious trades in the Pacific, not so much in the Atlantic as we go forward. All right, and finally, yep, still got some of these maps that I'm trying to get into your hands. If you want to get one, not too late, poster size, beautiful map. Go to that link right there. I'll put a link in the description of today's video. Over at PayPal, we can do PayPal, we can do Venmo, and I'll send it to you. You want to use your Sharpie on there, and you can track the rest of this year's storms. And probably going to have a little bit of a lull, but once we get to the end of July, like I've just showed you, through August and September, probably into October, that map is really going to start to get filled in. And again, a huge thank you to everybody who has ordered one recently. It means a lot to me to know that you've got one of these on your wall somewhere. That's awesome. A piece of my artwork, my handiwork, going all the way back to the beginning of my career at the end of the 90s. Some of you weren't even born yet. How about that? But yeah, if you want one, that's the link. I'll put it in today's description. All right? So there you go. We covered a lot on this first day of July. Before I let you go, an announcement of sorts. July 15th. From Dallas, Texas. Why Dallas? I'll explain when I get there. No big deal. It's just I got to travel back, bringing the Tacoma from this year's severe weather work, and I'm going to do it at the middle of the month. I'll be in Dallas on the 15th of July. We are going to have a live YouTube event, sort of a mid-season, what's going on, how are things looking, a recap of severe weather, looking ahead to the rest of hurricane season. And we're just going to do it live right on YouTube. Maybe have a few guests come in and offer their thoughts on things. General lighthearted look at everything, but again, I want to do it live and have the involvement of our wonderful audience. It'll be at 7 p.m. on July 15th, right on our YouTube channel. So hint, hint, if you haven't subscribed and done the notification thing, well, now's a good day to do so. I'll remind you over the next couple of weeks, of course. But yeah, I'll be traveling back from Kansas, where we got to get to Tacoma and come on home and be ready for hurricane season, right? Because we are HurricaneTrack, and it's time to focus more and more on that aspect of what we do. But we had a pretty busy severe weather season, and I want to talk about that and where we're going to go with that part of what we do. And then, of course, a look ahead at the rest of hurricane season. And by then, yeah, we're going to be getting towards, we'll be just a month away from mid-August at that point. All right? Anyway, that's it from me for today. As always, thanks for tuning in. From all of us at HurricaneTrack, I'm Mark Sudduth. I'll talk to you again later on.